everybody. We're back. This is Dr. Avila, DGS2. We're going to answer some more questions about the COVID vaccine. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve and Joanna.
So I have a question, which may be weighing on many people's minds. It seems too quick because at first they said, a vaccine minimum takes 18 months, but probably like 2+ years. But now here we are, not even 9 months later, and we have a vaccine. So what gives? Is this?
Yeah, and I'll even admit, that was my first reaction too. I was like, how can this possibly be considered safe? And so the reality is that they've been working on this technology a long time. And so the ability to make mRNA or RNA vaccines, there's no overstructure, no infrastructure that has to exist. Like for flu, where we have to make tons and tons of the virus first and then chop it up and then create vaccines out of it. We didn't have to do that with this because we're just giving a piece of instruction to your body to then make antibodies too. So there's not this big infrastructure overhead of having to make the virus itself first and then the infrastructure to break it down, chop it up. It's infrastructure that we already had in research laboratories that we could use to just make a bunch of copies of RNA. So that took a ton of time off the timeline. And then you basically, we already had the delivery models ready because they've been studying mRNA vaccines now for a long time. So basically, once we had the DNA of COVID, which we already had the majority of the DNA parts because of SARS and MERS, so we already had a lot of research of understanding coronaviruses thanks to the research that was done on those two viruses, a couple decades ago, that allowed us to sort of rapidly piece together, complete the DNA, and then get the copies of what we knew was the most infectious part of the coronavirus itself, and then turn that into a vaccine. So all of the time to actually make the vaccine was super fast. So the only part that we really had to do was trial and test it on humans. And that's most of the 9 months has been doing all of those trials on people and animals and models and in vitro models and trying to make sure, what we give you, does it actually work? And is it safe and effective at the same time? So most of that 9 months has actually been human trials.
Gotcha. So did anyone turn into mutants then?
Yeah, not with the two that made it to market. I don't know about the other ones.
So all the research had already mostly been done the last 10+ years, and then it sounds like we already had that methodology. So it was more just testing it out to make sure it's mostly okay and effective for people.
We already knew that the spike protein was the thing to go after, thanks to MERS and SARS, that if you could get an antibody to that, then people don't seem to get infected or get sick from the virus. Yeah, that already existed. And so then we just needed SARS-CoV-2, that virus's spike protein. So we quickly, they had the DNA by January. I don't even know, don't quote me on that time, but they had the DNA from this SARS-CoV-2 really fast. And so then we just needed find where the actual protein is that makes the spike and then just start replicating that and then see what happens if you give that to people. So, and of course there are, protocols in place to follow that. And so it does seem really fast, but that's because of all that behind the scenes work that existed already before this virus kind of popped into modern day.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I did also have another question. Just personally, right, as a woman, I've read some things out there that have said that, the vaccine is going to potentially hurt my chances of getting pregnant in the future, or I'll become sterile afterwards. Obviously that's a big concern.
Yeah.
So what do we know about that? And is that true? Is some parts of it true? What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, I don't know where that first came from. My guess is the thought of a DNA virus or a DNA vaccine, would potentially insert into your cell's DNA. And that is a little spooky. I think we'd all agree that sounds scary, right? To suddenly have your DNA fused with this, scary virus DNA. Right. I don't like the idea of that either. That's not what's happening here. But so in that situation, you wouldn't be able to control which cells are having the virus DNA fuse with your DNA. So there would be some worry that if you're making a new baby, maybe it would cross the placenta and impact that baby's DNA. We don't know. So this is not a DNA vaccine. It's this little tiny piece of RNA that has nothing to do with your nucleus, nothing to do with your DNA. It's just going to take your little protein manufacturing sites of your cells called ribosomes, and it's going to just make it. And then it's going to put it out into onto your cell, and your body's going to say, this doesn't belong here, get rid of this. Your body does that every day. Have you ever taken a bite of that piece of bread, and then you look at it and you're like, oh shoot, the backside has some mold on it? Am I the only one?
I did that once with a cake. Yeah. That's
right. So that mold is probably not something you should be eating, but your body suddenly has that in its cells and is like, oh, what is this stuff? We got to get rid of it. And so that process happens all the time. Your body's really good at finding things that shouldn't be there and getting rid of it. And so that's all this is doing. Yeah. So there's not really any chance that this could impact your fertility. It's just making antibodies to things that it should be exposed to on a regular basis, which are other coronaviruses, other rhinoviruses, the common cold virus, all those other things that you're constantly
getting. So that sounds like it's pretty much just using our standard response to bad things that shouldn't be in our body. Okay.
Yeah, we're just giving you a very specific thing to have a response to. So there's no reason that would impact fertility.
Okay.
There just doesn't, I can't think of a way that could happen. Other than you maybe having a slight fever for 24 hours as your body attacks this protein.
Right.
And maybe that's not the time to try to get pregnant that night.
Yeah. It sounds like not
but probably not because your fertility is impacted.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe a misunderstanding or maybe an exaggeration of I don't know what, but okay.
Yeah, I think it's
that's good to know.
It's a fear of DNA viruses, but this is an RNA virus.
It's an RNA. Okay.
Yeah.
So what about other safety related issues? What about if you have food allergies and things? I heard a guy died because he had a shellfish allergy and then did not go well for him.
Yeah, I have some weird allergies.
Yeah, I have a lot. I think we actually all have food allergies on the ark. So, yeah, that's interesting. I think that is coincidence. There is the only things in this virus are the RNA and then the fatty molecule that's around it, which is just fat, which very few people are going to be allergic to. And then there's a little sucrose in it. And there's some salts that are in it, like potassium chloride, things like that kind of help it with that stability piece. And then that's kind of it. There's actually no food allergens in it. Like I said, there's not egg. This isn't made up in, a vat of some unusual food allergen. And so it actually has nothing in it to make it more toxic or to make it make your body recognize it or anything. There's very little in it. So the thing that is risky is that when your body goes to make an antibody or a bunch of antibodies to the spike protein, that it could kind of go crazy, right? So your body could sort of over make antibodies, and those antibodies that you make to this could cross react with something else already inside of you. And that happens every single time you eat a food, you get a medication, and anytime you get exposed to anything in the world, every day and moment that you do that, you risk having an anaphylactic reaction or developing an allergy to something. And so far, it has been those once in a lifetime crazy struck by lightning scenarios of, hey, this person had a severe allergic reaction to it. And it's interesting, in the first 30,000 people in each trial that got it, they did not have that. Mm-hmm. And so you can see it's 1 in 45,000 people are going to suddenly have, I don't know, we don't know what that percent is, but in the 30,000 people of the two different vaccines that got it, they didn't have a single anaphylactic reaction or death. Okay. So yeah, is that going to happen? Anytime you eat anything, it could happen. The chances of it happening with this vaccine is really low. Gotcha. It's not impossible, but it's really low. And the fact that, we tested on so many people and no one had it, I think it's more coincidence than it is because that person was allergic to shellfish or because they had an allergy to something. It's just they were that person that was going to get that reaction. And that is incredibly rare. And we're always prepared for that. We know that's not just a COVID vaccine thing. That's any vaccine or any medication or any injection we give. Mm-hmm. We know that there's always a chance. That's why everyone who does vaccines has to know CPR, has to know how to manage allergic reactions. We always have the EpiPens, the medications available, just in case that were to happen.